Canada to require negative COVID-19 test for people crossing from USA by land border next week or face stiff fines up to $3,000.
Here's a summary of the article.
Non-essential travelers entering Canada through the land border will soon need to provide proof of a negative COVID-19 test before arrival, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced today. As of February 15, when you return to Canada through a land border, you'll need to show a 72-hour PCR test, just like air travel, Trudeau said today during his regular morning media briefing outside Rideau Cottage. The Prime Minister said border officers can't legally deny entry to Canadians, but those who show up without proof of a test could face fines of up to $3,000. What we can do is, in cases of no test to show, is apply a stiff penalty, a fine, and demand and ensure a rapid and complete follow-up to make sure that they are getting tested, that they are being properly quarantined, that they are not putting at risk the safety of other Canadians by returning home without a clear negative test, Trudeau said. As of next Monday, people who show up at a Canadian land border on non-essential travel, like returning snowbirds, will be expected to show a negative PCR test from the previous 72 hours. The new measure comes more than a month after the government announced air travelers will need proof of negative polymerase chain reaction tests, commonly known as PCR tests, 3 days before boarding their flights home. The testing requirement is in addition to the mandatory 14-day quarantine period for returning non-essential travelers.
This post received a score of 10,000, with an upvote ratio of 97%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
Greater than stiff fines of $3,000, which are only stiff fines for people in certain wage classes. For a good number of assholes who would cross, even knowingly positive, it's a minor inconvenience at the most.
They need to do the Norway speeding ticket strategy.
Think in Finland they fine you for your tax bracket when speeding.
Can we make this the same when politicians breach ethics violations? By that metric, Trudeau's grandchildren would still be paying.
I'd be fine with Trudeau if he got rid of FPTP.
It turns out that although we really promised it, and we really meant it, the people weren't really all that interested. And it would be devastating to my party's election results.
If the penalty for a crime is a fine, then that law only exists for the lower class.
And how is the prison system supposed to keep up if everyone is jailed for minor citations?
Wouldn't it just put less work on private prison to fine people? Aren't some losing money already when not populated to 90 to 95%? I'm joking obviously, but you're the one talking about prisons. There's other solutions before prison, you know. Fines depending on wealth, community service.
Canada does not have private for-profit prisons. I agree with the fines dependent on income bracket.
When was this? A freaking year ago.
This doesn't really change things though. The restrictions to come into Canada have not really changed in almost a year. I am Canadian and still haven't been home yet because they still require 2 weeks quarantine and also testing. I can do the testing no problem. We have to do it here anyways. But I don't have a way to quarantine myself that won't cost a fortune. The only people this really affects is people who are exempt from quarantine, which are very few.
Same here. I really miss my family. Stay strong.
I wish we'd work on much more accurate tests before committing to stuff like this.
There is a government official who speaks to that in the story. The story isn't, despite so many wanting to crap on Americans on here, about letting more people in. It is about putting more restrictions on the people who are currently allowed in. The article goes to great pains to indicate this primarily applies to Canadians returning to Canada and that if they had to quarantine before, they still do now.
Greater than despite so many wanting to crap on Americans on here, I thought that's what the purpose of this site was. Fines only affect the poor.
In AU's every single person coming in, except Nicole Kidman, even Novak Djokovic, have to do 14 days isolated in a hotel room on their dime. They are stupidly running the Australian Open in Melbourne and transported in hundreds of players and staff, and the players complain so much, and their girlfriends, about not having a hairdresser. But Jesus, it's worth it for the COVID-free country. This poor girl was knocked out of the Open by Ash Barty in a total of 44 minutes without scoring a game. Tears of joy.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to Speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.